Welcome to the Real News Network. I'm Kim Brown in Baltimore. Over the next few months, European leaders will be meeting to plan for a post-Brexit EU as negotiations get underway for Britain's departure. The business press has, for the most part, been saying that the Brexit vote has not had much impact on European economies. But meanwhile, the Wall Street Journal is reporting some economists as saying that recent economic data from the European Central Bank shows little need for monetary stimulus from the ECB. Now, the data also showed that the profits of the euro area banks plunged 20% in the first quarter of this year. And joining us now to discuss the state of the European economy is Heiner Flassbeck. Heiner was the director of the Division of Globalization and Development Strategies at the UN, and he's co-authored the new book, Against the Troika, Crisis and Austerity in the Eurozone. He's joining us today from France. Heiner, good day.
Hi, good to have you.
Heiner, in a recent article of yours, you write that official German statistics are misleading when it comes to the state of the German economy. Can you explain what this is and then give us what you think is an accurate portrayal of how Germany is faring?
Yeah, the German Statistical Office is reporting growth in the first and in the second quarter. But looking at the indicators, so to say, the hardcore indicators that you have, incoming orders, industrial production, construction production, retail sales, and so on, the picture is quite different. The picture is much bleaker. We have, according to all these indicators, we have a fall in production, construction, as well as industrial production and retail sales from the first quarter to the second quarter, and that does not fit with an increase of GDP. And what I said is we need to have more information about how this calculation is made by the Statistical Office.
So how have various parts of Europe been faring since the financial crisis began?
Well, let me say it's a plain disaster what happened in Europe. We had a very short recovery after 2009, which lasted for something like 1.5 years. Since 2011, European economy is actually flat. There is no growth at all, and some countries, in particular Italy and France, even see recession. Can you imagine recession since 2011? That's 5 years from now, and that is really a disaster and shows a complete failure of European economic policy, which was based on austerity and German-like improvement of competitiveness.
So, Heiner, are there any European countries experiencing a recovery?
No. Well, beside maybe some very small ones, I've checked in my report all the major countries, and there is no recovery nowhere. What we see is that a country like Spain and Portugal, which are at very low levels of production, much lower than France and Italy even, they have a kind of recovery, but you need a microscope to find it. And again, the reported figures for the Spanish economy, 0.8% increase quarter to quarter in the first quarter, 0.7% in the second quarter, are a product of fantasy, but doesn't have nothing to do with the reality. So my overall feeling is that there's a lot of politics behind the scenes in these calculations of GDP. It is a calculation, It's not a statistics. GDP is not a statistic, but it's a calculation based on statistical indicators. And so what we see is even in the official rate, it's very slow growth. It's close to no growth. But as I said, the real indicators show there is nothing. France still has an unemployment rate of more than 10%, 5 years after the end of the small boom that ended in 2011. 10%, more than 10%. Imagine what the political discussion in the United States would be if this would be the result of economic policy.
Heiner, you write that at its core, it is German-Dutch mercantilism, which is responsible, together with the economic governance of austerity, for the stagnation across Europe. What is Germany doing that is contributing to the regional stagnation, and what alternative policies to austerity can EU nations adopt to bring about a real recovery?
Well, you see, the first thing, I mentioned it several times in interviews with TRNN, is that Germany went on a mercantilistic path immediately after the beginning of the currency union by wage dumping. Germany put political pressure on wage increases, so the wages did not increase in line with productivity, and that increased German competitiveness inside the monetary union, because the monetary union do not have a currency, an exchange rate that you could change to compensate for such an advantage. So Germany, so to say, beggared its neighbors by going for competitiveness, which is clearly a mercantilist strategy, a useless mercantilist strategy. Well, it brings you a current account surplus. Germany has now the biggest current account surplus in the whole world, with something close to 9% of GDP. But overall, demand in Germany was flat, and only after a while, when the other countries in Europe went into recession, Germany really looks better, because it is looking relatively better, but not in absolute terms. So, but this is blocking, so to say, the whole of the monetary union, and this is a huge block of 450 million people, and the GDP that is larger than that of the United States is blocked by the German approach, because Germany is insisting that it has got everything right. German strategy was right, and so it's forcing the other countries to do the same mercantilist approach, which is stupid for a big closed economy, more or less closed economy, that is, as if you would say in the United States, we have to cut wages, we have to tighten our belts to improve our exports. And even if our domestic demand is collapsing, we don't care, we have to improve exports. And this is stupid, and this shows that the whole of Europe, including France and Italy, and their political leaders, have not really understood what is Europe all about.
So there are no European countries right now experiencing economic recovery, and the EU is going to have to figure how it is going to deal with the Brexit that was voted on by British citizens just a few months ago. We've been speaking with Heiner Flassbeck. Heiner was the director of the Division of Globalization and Development Strategies at the UN. You can also check out his new book he's co-authored. It's called Against the Troika, Crisis and Austerity in the Eurozone. He's been speaking to us today from France. Heiner, thank you so much for your time and your expertise.
Thank you for having me. Bye.
You're watching the Real News Network.